listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 294, Deep Purple in Rock album ranking. And coming to you from the suburbs of Chicago, where we are full of dust, I am your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John ENIAC Mottola.
Oh, Jesus, I should probably know this one. ENIAC.
Oh, you might, you should. I don't know, because you're a big nerd at heart.
ENIAC, a nerd? What does it have to do with Star Trek or something?
No.
Oh, ENIAC, the computer, the big computer, right?
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Joe got it. I'm like, now you saw it in the chat, so.
Yeah. Oh, I see what. Yeah, he wrote it. Yeah, the big computer that was like the size of a train or whatever.
The site of the first computer, ENIAC, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Philadelphia. ENIAC.
Hey-o.
Was it ENIAC, I think?
Yeah.
There we go. And that's where Joe
See,
is
and that's why he knows.
There we go. That's why, although he was saying before the show that he seems to know most of these before I do, which is not surprising. Yeah, we're on a live stream for this episode. We got some patrons in the chat right now, so thank you everybody for joining us. We've got workers upstairs listening to loud reggae music and drilling and sawing and drilling things in and painting and scraping. So if you hear any of that, I apologize, but my house is kind of doesn't belong to me for the next little bit until these guys are all done with it. So
I'd rather hear the sawing and the hammering and the painting than the reggae.
Well, the guy was listening to some Sublime, so Jen started chatting with him. Was like, "Oh, our friend is in a Sublime cover band," and he's like, "Oh, really?" He's like, "Oh man, he's a younger guy, so he's like, oh yeah, I liked them since I was a little kid." And I was like, "Hey, next time they're in town, let me know. I'll get you free tickets." And I texted Scott. I was like, "Hey, I just volunteered some free tickets for your next Chicago show."
Oh, hey, if it gets him to do a better job up there.
Yeah, exactly. I was
keeps him on task.
Yeah, I was like, I'll pay you back for the tickets, but he wouldn't. I mean, that's good about having a friend that's that good a friend, where I could just be like, without asking, I could just volunteer free tickets for a painter that I met last week. But yes, welcome to the show, everybody. This is one of our rankings shows, so we're gonna get into it. But our podcast is 100% listener supported, so if you receive some value from our show, please consider giving us some value back. We would love to have it. All the money goes right back into the show, pays for keeping the lights on, so to speak. You can support our show that way. You can support our show by going into the Etsy store and purchasing one of our either a purple or silver beanie, or a little winter hat here, toque, beanie, skull cap. What else do they call these things?
Scully.
Okay.
A Scully.
Like Dana Scully, like Mulder and Scully.
No, just another way of saying a skull cap, Scully.
Well, if you want a Scully, then let us know. I'll call it whatever you want to call it if you just buy it. Just buy it. Buy my product. Do you remember that guy? Like the guy used to sell is like, I'm selling this CD-ROM that will teach you how to use Windows. And at the end of the commercial, he's like, buy my product. It was so desperate. I felt so bad for the guy. Not bad enough to buy his product though.
Yeah, of course not.
But yeah, so this becoming a patron gets you access to our ratings spreadsheet. It also gets you access to submit your rankings for our album rankings shows. We're on In Rock. We're going in chronological order, so you can figure out what's next. Our Fireball rankings are going to be coming up soon. So if you're listening to this and you want to get in on the Fireball episode, either on the live stream, ranking the album, or both, then sign up on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You get all of that and a bag of Chips Ahoy. What else do you get? You get that. You get access to our Discord, our patrons only Discord, so you can join in the discussion and the chat and join us on any of our live stream shows. You can also donate on PayPal or support us on Cash App or on Ko-fi. So we hope to always make your acquaintance as a new patron. And before we get into the meat of the episode, we're going to start with our patrons at the executive level, and at the in memoriam tier, the wonderful late Gerald, Jerry, Kelly, and family. At the $25 uncommon man tier, we have Ovis Nakvi. At the 15 squid tier, we have Alan. At the 10-pound good doctor tier, we have Dr. Mike Catan. At the turn it up to $11 tier, Clay Wambacher, Frank Thielgard Mortensen, Mickelstein, Will Porter, PhD, BP, and Michael, don't call him Bradford Bagford, who's joining us in the chat right now. At the $10 someone came tier, we have Ryan M, Jeff Bryce, Victor Campos, Better Call Saul Evans. And Peter from Illinois. And at the Hughes-Ween by 2033 tier, Fielding Fowler. Bleh. Thank you so much to all of you for your generous support of the Deep Purple podcast. Did the abbreviated blur today.
Really,
for some reason that really got you.
I wasn't expecting just that.
Yeah, it was a game time decision.
Oh.
You can check out other like-minded shows on deepdivepodcastnetwork.com. And then before we wrap up and get into the show here, wrap up our little housekeeping segment, we have a segment we have to do, which is Postcards from the Edge of Connecticut. And staying true to form this week, just came in the mail today. And this postcard right here. And it is actually coming to us from the great state of Connecticut. It's a nice little archway. Kind of looks like the towers in Narragansett where I got married.
Kind of looks like the tower that Blackmore might live in.
It does, yeah. I bet he's archers up there to kill anyone that gets too close.
Rapunzel.
Rapunzel, let down your hair. This one says, "Hey, Nate. Now here's not the Gateway Arch for you. Although one of the many failed city slogans was Hartford, Gateway to New England, I've been up to the top of the arch once and under it many times. The Roback." And this is the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Arch in Bushnell Park, Hartford, Connecticut, honors the 4,000 Hartford citizens who served in the American Civil War, including 400 who died for the Union cause. It was first permanent triumphal arch to be built in America, completed in 1886, and wouldn't you know, it arrived on today, which is Veterans Day as we record. So thank you to all those wonderful veterans who fought the good fight for the right side in the Civil War. We appreciate it. And yeah, but that's not it, folks. We also have this box that arrived just the other day. I'm going to open it here on the air. Came priority mail from no other than Jeff Bryce, our patron in Wisconsin. So I'm going to open this up. It says, so it says, "Hello, Nathan. Enjoy the CD. Thank you for your order. If you need any more Yanni, don't hesitate to contact me." And there's a Yanni CD inside. And it's written on Holiday Inn stationery. So I don't know if he was staying at the Holiday Inn. But In the Mirror by Yanni. Look at this. This looks well worn. So I think Mr. Bryce might have spun this more than a few times. But that's not all, folks. That's in the top of the box. And there's a little divider. And there's another note. Okay, here's the interview CD plus a great extra just to fill the CD. Hopefully, it is useful to you. Sorry about the sloppy penmanship. It's after 12 a.m. Okay, onward, Jeff Bryce. And this is he sent a CD that's got Deep Purple in Rock 25th anniversary interviews. How fitting, considering what we're doing today. And then interviews with John Roger and Ian Pace. And then the show in Amsterdam, Netherlands from 1970. Wow. Thank you. And that's not it, folks. There's another Best of New Age CD in there, featuring a lot of people I haven't heard of. Oh, Vangelis, Tangerine Dream. I've heard of them. Okay. Best in New Age. Wow. Gonna have to just really zen out in here after. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. I'll definitely add those interviews to my archives. Really appreciate it. All right. So here we are today to talk about what, John? We're here to talk about In Rock.
In Rock.
Deep Purple in Rock, to be more precise and more proper. The actual name of the album. But yeah, we've done the first 3 studio albums. We're on our 4th now with Deep Purple in Rock. And what we do for these episodes, if you're new to them, our last one was the self-titled. Yeah, I did. You know, they're asking me if I got mail today. I did get mail today. That's weird. It's Veterans Day. Yeah.
Maybe they don't observe that out in Illinois.
Well, yeah. Now I'm confused because why did I? Well, no, we observe it. Well, the kids had school today, but like banks and stuff are closed, so I don't know if it's just kind of a.
Were you sure you didn't get it like yesterday or?
Well, yesterday was
Sunday. Or I don't know, a couple of days ago. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't check my mail every day. I check it like once a week. So
yeah, I check it every day now because I never know how many postcards and things I'm going to be getting.
Yeah.
Maybe I forgot to check the mail on Saturday. I don't know. Yeah, it seems.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe that's more likely, but could be the Gardeau's going to check his mail now.
He's going to make sure
to let me know. Who knows? But anyway, yeah, sorry. So yeah, if you aren't familiar with these episodes, we send out a little survey to all of our patrons and tell them to rank the songs on the album from 1 to whatever, 1 being your favorite song on the album and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever, being your least favorite song on the album. So obviously there's some songs with some obvious stinkers on them, and those will become last. But this is our first album where this is a real tough one.
Yeah, there are non-stinkers on this album.
Yes, there are no. This is the first one where you're going to see people ranking something as a 7. There's 7 tracks on this album, and saying, you know, hey, I really like the song, but something had to be last, and there's going to be things that are first. So, you know, I think we have I think this is the first one where you and I don't link up on any songs,
really,
with our rankings, but you know, pretty close on some of them. And interestingly, John, you were not the last person to get your rankings in.
Really?
Yeah, you are not. Somebody came in at the last minute. I'll leave them anonymous for now. And not only did they come in at the last minute, but they came in and their rankings actually flipped 2 of the songs from I think the 3rd and 4th place songs.
Yeah,
flipped as a result of their rankings. So every ranking counts. We got a lot of rankings, a lot of participation on this one, which is great. And yeah, I don't know. Should we get right into it?
Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to start with the last track, go all the way to the second to last track, and by that point you'll be able to figure out the first song. But here we go. We're going to start with the 7th, the last ranked track, according to us and our patrons, for Deep Purple in Rock.
Number 7.
And it is Into the Fire. So, hey, like I said, something had to come in last. And I think the stretch on the rankings and the numbers on this one are pretty tight. This one got 100 points. The 5th track on the album.
Yeah.
But it did not beat out anything else. So let's see where we are here. I ranked this track number 4. You ranked it number 6.
Yeah.
It looks like our highest ranking was Zwapper ranked at number 1.
Wow.
Sarah ranked at number 1. Kev Roberts ranked at number 1. Jonathan Headland ranked at number 2. So we had some pretty high rankings on there, but oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. No, I got it. I was looking at the right one. Sorry. So yeah, that's it. Into the Fire. John, what do you think about this one?
I mean, I've always thought it was a great song. I love it. I love how they do it live now. I
Yep.
think, but I mean, we're talking about this version of it. I mean, like we said, something had to go down toward the bottom, and just doing my rankings, they were just ones that I liked a lot better than this. So it kind of went, it went number 6. It went second to last for me. But I mean, I love the blues rock style, like the really just heavy kind of they were doing stuff like similar, like what I guess Cream and Zeppelin were doing around the time. I mean, even just this being like an album track from Deep Purple, self-titled, just this as an album track is so wildly different from what they did a year earlier. So I mean,
Yes.
it's still great, just like light years ahead of what they were doing. So yeah, very, very timely song. It has that really kind of like fuzzed out, like I said, Cream, Zeppelin type of sound to it. So it sounds like they were doing in this song what their contemporaries were trying to do. But
Yeah,
you
it actually sounds like it's when you say fuzzed out, it actually sounds like it's distorted, like they came in too hot with it.
yeah, that's one of the reasons that I love this album and the production. Um, but yeah, this song is yeah, I love this
Yeah,
song.
and we've seen them perform this recently, and our last episode we saw Gillan, well, the whole band, doing this live in Wacken, and saw like kind of the way that it had evolved with Gillan going fire, like really like he can't quite do it the exact same way he did before, but he does it. He's let it evolve into like a really, really cool thing that he does live.
Yeah. I mean, this yeah, well, I mean, what else can you say about it? I mean, it's different. I love the plotting, kind of riff to it. It's just I mean, this is one of the, I mean, we'll get through like every song is just like one of the earliest kind of heavy albums. Like there's so many things on this album that kind of cued me into like what heaviness was.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of, I mean, you could argue like right around this time. I mean, these guys were like right up there with uh, Sabbath and everybody else that quote unquote invented hard music, heavy metal. Because I mean, you give this to like a band like 20 years later, like give it to Metallica, right? Why do you think that they like these guys?
Yeah, of course.
Right? Because you could hear like heavier bands like in the 80s, 90s, like doing this, and you'd be like, oh, what's this song? Is this a new song? You'd be like, no, it was written in 1970.
Yeah. But yeah, great track. Let's listen and see, or let's see what some of our patrons said about it. Get to
Yes.
perform responses. Where are we? Into the Fire. Okay. Michael Bagford, this is a great jamming tune. Eddie Lyon, an underrated track on the album featuring one of Lord's most insane solos ever. Wait, no, we're looking at the wrong one. I was like, what? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Michael
no.
Bagford, it rocks. Simple as that. Eddie, one of the heaviest pieces on the entire album with a riff that sounds like a giant stomping through your ears and a bluesy solo.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it reminds me of what Jonathan Headland would call a dinosaur riff that sounds
Yes.
like a dinosaur
Yeah,
walking.
like a stomp. Yeah. Mhm.
And yeah, I think this would kind of qualify as that. What else do we have? Scott Haskin, great heavy song. West and Super Mario Pilgrim, this song has never grown on me. I used to skip it when listening to In Rock as a teenager. Good guitar riff though. Ovis Nakvi, not a huge fan. There you go. That's why it's some of them are coming in last. Graham Bonnet's Disco Pants and Haircuts. I probably have the song higher than most, and he came in with this one at number 2. So yes, I think he does. Arthur Smith brings the pace down again, but no less intense. Great mid-tempo rock. Ivan Fjellbu, heavy stuff, raw vocal from Gillan. Always liked it, and I love the fact that they've played it live in recent years. Kenny Wymore, I always like the power of this one. Reminds me a little of Sabbath, which you just touched on. Mark Roback saying the beginning reminds him of Mark as being a Mark 1. Oh, no, I'm looking at the wrong one again. No, I am. I'm sorry. Reminds him of a Mark 1 holdover. Could hardly hear Lord's organ even when it finally kicks in. However, when it picks up, I suddenly felt that this moved ahead for me. Love the distorted organ. Raf Calf, this is extremely heavy. I love the slow plodding rhythm, and Gillan's vocals are so metal. Best song on the album. Did he have this as the best one? No, he put this as the... Uh-oh. I don't know if he got his rankings backwards, but I don't think he ranked it as his best song on the album.
Whoops.
Uh-oh. International Class Hall of Famer Rich Yangwei Shaler says, always loved this one, but the LBDP have flogged it a bit live. IG can't do it justice anymore. Took a little of the shine off it for me. Hank the Tank, solid. Robert Smith, I have to rank something as number 7, but the margin between most liked and least is incredibly small. Stuart McCord, I always loved the excellent groove on this one, especially as a kid. The Gardeau says drip. You'll see a theme in his comments. Zwapper says, to quote Electric Boys, Groovus Maximus. Damn, this swings so hard. Great solos. Anton Glaving says, just a great, solid, catchy rock song. I would say Gillan's performance is the most memorable. Joe Sigler says, well, as you can hear a lot, Something Has Got to Go Last. Not bad at all, but not the most inventive song for me. The main riff that runs through it never seems to go anywhere, which I like, but this time not so much. Duncan Leask, mid-tempo rocker with maybe not as much as the rest of the album. Lord Longford, this track ranks low because I always feel it slightly dampens the energy from the tracks before. It's not a bad song, just maybe a 95 out of 100 rather than 100 out of 100. And then Anders Engstrom writes... Oh, he doesn't write anything. Sarah writes, one of the most addicting riffs from Mark II in the 70s. The entire song is just really tight, and Ian's delivery is iconic. Kev Roberts, back up to full speed with this one. This track just connects with me, and I've always loved it. And Jonathan Headland says, Into the Fire is just an incredible song. Heavy like Sabbath versus our Beatles at their stompiest and gnarliest when Gillan screams, into the fire! Even Bloodsucker should throw a glance over the shoulder because this might well be the best song on In Rock. However, today it lands the silver. Extra credit for its light sequence. All right. So we might have to pick and choose a little bit from these comments because we got a lot for every song. We get a lot of participation, but some very good. I wonder, maybe we should I'll pick and choose kind of some random comments going forward, and then we'll put all the comments in the show notes. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
How's that grab you?
It grabs me, all right.
Grabs you, okay. All right, so let's go on to the next track. Track number 6.
Number 6.
And that is Living Wreck. So there you go, starting with that, super reverberated drums being played like down the hallway or at the bottom of the stairwell. That goes into like a really, really cool riff. I always loved the little triplet thing Ian Pace does on the bass drum, and I think it's coming up right here. It's so awesome. Yeah. But yeah, it's another great song. What do you think about this one?
This is I rated this one last. Just because and I never really thought about it until we were doing this rankings, but it's like in comparison to the other songs, I had to put it last because I guess I found it the least the least of the best because everything on this album is the best. But I would say like this is the one that I'm kind of the most lukewarm to.
Hmm.
I mean it's got a lot of great elements to it. I always liked right after the I guess the chorus like John Lord doing this
Yeah.
with the
Yep.
keyboards, kind of the screeching, it always made me think of like those old like horror cartoons where they'd be like the ghost would be like
Oh
wow,
yeah. Yeah.
wow with like the with like the wind, blowing like that,
Yep.
like the old Disney cartoons in the 30s. Um, but yeah, it's got like the outro keyboard solo is great. Richie's solo in the middle just kind of like kind of spacey and out there. It's like yeah, it's another great track. But again, I think that there were some in my list that just come above this for reasons that shall be revealed soon.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, this one is to me usually kind of like, and this sounds more harsh than I mean it, but it's one of the more forgettable songs on the album. Even though I
Yeah.
really like it, like it's one of those ones like, oh yeah, this song's on that album too, and I always love it. It's like it's a great song. Like there's nothing on this album I'd ever consider skipping, but yeah, it just doesn't really um when it's dealing with the likes of these other heavy hitters on this album, it's just hard to compare it to them.
And I mean, it's not even like I don't think that this makes it less than any of the other songs, but it almost like if you think about it for a minute, you can almost hear this being like a Mark One holdover. Like you could hear Rod singing this,
Yep.
So it's and I mean, it's not a stretch on this album that some of the things you could be like, yeah, Rod could have sang that, not doing the really high vocals that Gillan did, but I often wondered, like, someday if they did an AI with Rod doing the vocals on this, how it would sound. That would be something I'd be interested in.
Oh, I'm a living wreck. Or more importantly, what would he have written this song about? His songs tend to be more about like love and stuff like that. So maybe he would just be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, she was a pretty girl,"
But yeah, I think that overall this song is kind of like I think it's because compared to some of the other ones, it's a little more mid-tempo, so that's kind of why I have a lukewarm response to it.
Yeah. All right.
So I can see why maybe some of the other rankings said the same.
So I'm gonna stagger my reading of the comments here. Yeah, Michael Bagford says kind of exactly what I was saying. Sometimes I almost forget about this song, but when I listen to it, I really realize how cool it is. Love that drum intro at the beginning. Eddie saying a damn funky riffing, which I agree with. Blackboard Tights, I've removed the fatigue factor when choosing my order, as the thought of having Child in Time or Speed King anywhere but near the top would be blasphemous. However, if I did include the fatigue factor, then this would easily be number one and my most listened to song on In Rock. Imagine that. Scott Haskins saying he thinks he dated her, the living wreck. I especially like Ian's vocals on this one. One of the songs I listen to the most. That's Weston Supermare Pilgrim. Let's see. Love the intro to this with Pacey coming down the corridor towards you, Arthur Smith says. Like the space in this song, you can still hear all the instruments separately rather than the wall of sound that more metal rock bands go for. Yeah, and that's something we've talked about a million times, is the production on these albums being more dynamic and a little easier to make out things rather than just like looking at the waveform and it's just a block. Ivan Fjellbu saying this sounds like a Mark I song to him.
Hey?
His least favorite on the album, so good call on that one. Karsten Lau, I always loved this song. In Rock was my second album ever, and both the riff and the lyrics caught me. Mark Roback, love the overdriven organ swells. They fit this tune. Very dry drums. Love that Middle Eastern guitar feel. Some of these I'm kind of paraphrasing too. Raf Calf says, someone wrote in the Music League that the organ sounds like a cornered puma, which is great. That's another thing to mention is that we do this Music League through the Discord, and what it is you get prompts for a song. So like, hey, a song about that's about the weather, or a song that's an opening song on an album, or a song that's a cover by a different band, and everyone has to submit a song, and then a playlist is generated. You listen to the playlist, and then you rank the songs, and you don't know who submitted what, and at the end it tells you who submitted, and then you get points, and then whoever wins. Honestly, I never even pay attention to the points or who wins, because it's just more fun selecting the songs. But yeah, if you want to join us in that, then become a patron. So yeah, there's this song by Rat-a-Tat. I don't know if anybody knows that, but where they actually use like a cougar or something noise in it, and it's like a really cool heavy. There's kind of like electronic but heavy guitar music, and they do a song like that's almost like this, that just is like a kind of a screeching cougar noise, and it's kind of cool how they sample it. Rich says, feel odd calling anything the worst on the album, because we all know that doesn't exist. I just find myself going back to this one the least. Stuart McCord, the absolutely monstrous sound of the drum intro as it fades in helps make this track another firm favorite of mine when I was first listening to indie rock growing up. The Gardeau says, Stilo. Anton Glaving says, I would rank this one the lowest, but I still think it's great. Real Hendrixy. I love how the organ hisses like a stray cat.
Yep. See, we all have that same feeling about it. We're all calling it different things.
Yes, but it's the same idea.
But it's like kind of a feline sounding noise.
Yes. Joe Sigler says, my daughter adores this song and the keyboard sound, that primarily reason she's into Deep Purple. She heard that once and immediately got her attention. That's good parenting right there. Duncan Leask saying this was almost left off the album by the band. Fits the album pacing better than something like Cry Free, so it's by no means filler. Great vehicle for Lord. A lot of people apologizing and saying something's got to come last. What else we got here? Underrated in the Mark II 70s catalog. Pacey and John are firing at all angles. That was from Sarah. Kev Roberts saying that he thinks this would fit better on Fireball, this song. So there you go. There's some random selections from our patrons. And with that, it's time to go on to our next one, which is
number 5.
And that is Flight of the Rats.
Hmm.
Love that. Starting off on the octave and then going to the low note with the bass. All right, so this one, John. Well, actually, let me go over some of the rankings first.
Yeah.
You ranked this number 4.
Mm-hmm.
I ranked this last at 7.
Yeah, I get that. I get a lot of that, and I feel like this is kind of a last ranked song for some reason.
Yeah. Jonathan Headland also ranked at 7th. David Haddam ranked at 7th. Zwapper, no, I'm sorry. The Gardeau ranked at 1st. There you go.
Yeah, Gardeau.
Jeff Bryce ranked at 1st. I know I feel like a lot of people really like this song, but for me, it never really quite grabbed me as much as some of the other stuff on the album.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like, I don't know what it is about it. It's kind of like, it's a little like, the melody is just a little too repetitive for me. But, you know, there are obviously some really good solos on the song, and it's got a cool kind of bluesy but heavy riff. What do you think of this one?
This was tough for me to put in the middle, just because I always look forward to the song when comes on, just because it's got a heavy riff. It's a driving song. I consider it like almost like a sister song to Hard Loving Man, because they're both
Oh yeah,
really
yeah.
riff driven, long songs with like dueling solos, or like two long solos and stuff. And one of my favorite things about this is that it has so many parts, and it's one of two songs that, after I heard it, convinced me that, and like, an organ was a heavy instrument. Like
Yeah.
Lord's solo on this song, aside from another one on this, it just like blew my mind the first time I heard it. I'm like, how could a keyboard be that heavy?
Yeah.
That was like when I was a teenager. I'm like, there's no way that's a keyboard solo. Like, this sounds like he's ready to like blow it up with dynamite, for crying out loud. So, but yeah, that's I would say overall, yeah, the song is a little lower than Hard Loving Man for me. But I mean, the Hammond solo on this is just insane.
Yeah. Well, Blackmore Tights says probably my favorite riff on the album, and a drum solo that doesn't make me want to kill myself. Scott Haskins saying just a fun song. Ovis Nakvi says, brilliant, all on fire, Lord on fire, girl on fire. Arthur Smith, another cracker right out the box. It's relentless, and I love it for that. And then, yeah, you kind of, there are all these very memorable moments. Like, obviously, you got that, like, almost wah part of the organ solo. You've got that, like, really cool thing he does on the guitar, which is like, he does it, almost sounds like a Western theme kind of sort of thing, or like not a Western theme, but like a Dick Dale sort of thing he's doing on the guitar. Is that the right guy, Dick Dale?
Yeah, I think so. The King of the Surf guitar.
Okay, good. I was like,
who did the trem picking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right here. Yeah. Ivan Fjellbus is great driving rhythm on this song. He says, wonder who's the blue-blooded, well-studded English fool. I'm a bit surprised that I rank it as high as number 3, but what the hell? Why not? It's so great. Kenny Wymore saying this one has never really grabbed him for whatever reason. So maybe feeling a little bit more like me on this one. But yeah, I mean, the solo sections of it are amazing. But yeah, I think it's the vocal part that just kind of doesn't do it for me quite as much. Hank the Tank, one of my faves from early DP. Robert Smith saying it just sounds like they just went in the studio and recorded this first take. The Gardeau saying per, P-E-R. I don't know. I don't even know that one. I think he's making up his own Gen Z slang. Zwapper, cool upbeat song that probably could have been put before Child in Time on the album. I really like this one. Great solo by John. Ritchie is damn funky on this one. Oh, and pacey. What else we got? Great opener for side 2, writes Duncan Leask, and a great song with lots of great elements to it. It gets ranked so low by me because I consider there to be better songs on the album. The Lord Blackmore solos on here really stand out.
Yeah.
Another driving, powerful display of the virtuosity and interplay within the band, writes Will Porter. It did take a few listens to determine whether this or Hard Lovin' Man was my number 3, but this just has the edge by virtue of Pacey's solo spot. Such a good riff, says Lord Longford. I kind of feel this is where Ritchie started to find his feet as the riff master. Very close between this and Speed King for number 1.
Okay.
Anders Engstrom says, could get a higher rank, but the ending is too long.
Yeah, I always kind of thought that too, when they went back to this kind of percussive part, that it was a little unnecessary, like almost like anticlimactic.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they already did it.
Yeah, exactly. Excuse me. Jonathan writes, The main riff gives a Tony Iommi breathing the free air type vibe, as heard in the likes of Never Say Die or After Forever. But unfortunately for the Purple team, Black just has the edge when it comes to add melody and lyrics, this type of groove. Richie's break riff, he goes do-do-do-do-do-do, which I think might have been what I was talking about, is a cool touch. But the song somehow lacks a strong lead, and the lyrics seem nonsensical. Solos are great, but what else is new? And the damn funky part is fun. And then here we go with Pacey's solo. But Jonathan says the Rat comes in 7th. And I think with a drum solo like this, you can get away. You know, we've talked before about how fraud it is to put a drum solo on an album. But this is almost more like he's just warming up for the big stinger at the end.
Well, exactly,
only
yeah.
30 seconds worth of drumming.
Yeah, this isn't like the before or after the guitar solo in the middle of the song drum solo. Like, you know that this is leading up to the grand finale.
Yeah. It's
so
not
that
one
makes
of
it
those
acceptable.
My turn now solos. It's like, well, okay, like you could just like,
My
okay, we
turn
did
now.
we did the guitar, we did the who's next? Okay, and then sometimes they throw in a bass solo or whatever, but that's pretty risky. But the Gardot is saying per the kids at work, per means perfect.
Ah.
All right, see? I'm learning new ones. I did not know that. All right. And then why don't we do one more and then we'll break for patrons.
Okay.
Okay. So here we are.
Number 4.
Hard Lovin' Man. Okay, so Hard Lovin' Man. You ranked this a 3.
Mm-hmm.
I ranked it a 5. We have a couple of 1s, one from Mr. Knockfee, and one from Mr. Haskin, another from Mr. Calf, another from Robert Smith. But it had a few 7s. Carson Lau ranked this last. Stuart McCord ranked it last. Lord Longford ranked it last. And Sarah ranked it last. So, and then a smattering in the middle. John, what do you think of Hard Lovin' Man?
I mean, obviously, Hard Lovin' Man is one of my top 3. It had to battle up the spot of with 2 others, obviously. But I would say between this and Flight of the Rat, this one is my favorite longer song.
Yep.
I mean, I always loved Richie's chugging early metal riff on this. And then, I mean, Gillan's vocals, just him proclaiming that he's a hard loving man. It just always like, just resonated with me as like such a early example of like such a heavy song. And then, again, like, Lord's keyboard solo in the middle was one of the first ones, along with Flight of the Rat, where I realized for the first time that an organ could be a heavy instrument. I mean, when he's doing this, they're just chugging along in the background. He's going, nah, 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 nah. It sounds like an ambulance going off, like flying off a cliff. And I'm sitting there when I'm like 14, going, what the hell is this?
Mm-hmm.
And I still just love listening to it, because you hear him like. This whole song sounds like at certain times it's ready to like fall apart and go off the rails, and then it just pulls back together, and it's just like one of those kind of just really wild head banging songs. And yeah, I love it. See, and then you just have just Lord doing this crazy stuff. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to come in and be as heavy as I can on the organ. Like,
and he's doing so much really discordant stuff on this song, but it makes it, the way that only Lord can. I could play those same notes and it would sound like garbage. But he somehow manages to he can put any note in there and just make it sound right.
But I mean, you just hear the overdriven sound of that, and then the band is in the back just dun, 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 dun,
just galloping along.
Oh, just being so friggin' heavy. Like,
yeah, it's a great one, and you've got some really great early Gillan screams on this one.
Yeah.
Like some of his, better early studio screaming. All right, well, let's look at some of what our patrons said. Let me scroll across. Hard Lovin' Man. Okay, so Saul Evans saying this could be the third 5 score for him if he was ranking these based on our ranking system. Loves this one. Weston Super Mario Pilgrim, fantastic finale. This song must have inspired so many hard rock bands in the 70s and 80s. Graham Bonnets, it just does the emoji for
The devil
the
horns.
little slashes with the M, the devil horns.
Oh yeah.
What else we got here? Kenny Weimar, great heavy song. Love the driving beat. A very propulsive sound. That's a good word. And then Lord's sci-fi keyboards work and Richie's frantic guitar solo really make this song take off into orbit. Mark Roback, I think that the galloping riff throughout makes this one. The song has a much better flow than Speed King, and I love everything cuts in and out. It's just like the guitar. But I thought the production of moving the guitar at the end was overblown and annoying. So I don't know if he's talking about like the panning, but Rich writes another hard charger, that keyboard riff, RB chugging away. It's like a freight train coming at you. Absolutely. And it's a cool, like, really cool driving song for the end of the album too.
Oh yeah.
Robert Smith,
way to
probably
go
not
out.
many people's choice as their number one, but I always loved this song. Stuart McCord, it's difficult, but something has to be rated last. That's what basically everyone says about every song they ranked last, right? Nobody's like, this one's a piece of crap. They're all just like, nope, I feel bad ranking it last. Lagardeau writes, Riz. I mean, you'd have to have Riz if you were a hard-loving man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Zwapper,
Yeah.
great ending track again, super groovy, screaming organ. Joe Sigler, I love the driving sound on this song, a fast, persistent vibe that flows throughout it. On a lesser album, this would be ranked far higher. Great stuff. Richie's guitar sound at the end could be described as a guitar orgasm. All right. Yeah, I can see that. Will Porter says, or the Ian Gillan's Gong song, as it's become to know. Oh, so this is what Roback's talking about with the... Yeah, I see what he's saying. Like, when it goes... but when he starts playing the more stuff, I think maybe it would have been better to isolate it stereo, but a minor production quibble.
I mean, I always thought that was awesome because the band drops out.
Yeah.
Richie's doing all this crazy circa what he was doing in the live shows at this time type of stuff. Because I mean, especially at the end, it sounds like when he rubs the guitar on his ass on the amps, like.
Yeah,
and they caught it on record.
We probably talked about it when we did the episode, 5 years and 200 episodes, almost 300 episodes ago, when we first covered this. But I always wondered if there was like a mistake, but they loved it so much, like, well, let's just fade out the rest of the band with, like, say Ian Pace dropped his sticks or whatever. Let's fade it out, and then we'll fade it back in, and it's like we'll keep that thing that Richie was doing, and we'll just kind of distract everyone for it. It could be.
Well, I mean, I just love how they captured Richie in that era. I mean, just imagine him doing that just a year before. It was like you can't even fathom that. Like that whole thing where he did in the Denmark 72 concert, which is the first time I saw him doing it. And I remember reading something which probably also mentioned on the episode where he was I think Richie was being interviewed, and he was talking about how when he was in the studio, they were working with a really traditional type of engineer, and to make all those sounds, he was like rubbing the guitar against the amps and throwing it in the air, and sitting on it and shit, and stepping on it. And the engineer's like, "The fuck is this guy doing?" Like,
What do you do? You know, we're in the studio. Nobody can see you.
I all thought he was out of his mind, but he did all that stuff to get that sound out of
Yeah.
his guitar. And I think that's probably one of the most effective um, things that have ever been caught on record that kind of replicate what he did live. Like, because,
Yeah.
you would see him doing that stuff, and just the way that they replicated, like, not only the sound, but, like, I guess just the band dropping out and then coming back in. They just kind of captured this whole vibe, this whole feeling of kind of what they did live, but condensed a little bit. So, or what they were gonna do live. And
Right.
I just, that's what I love about it.
Yep.
It's like pioneering
Oh,
almost,
very much so.
that song.
Sarah writes, my hearing ability goes down a notch every time I hear this one. I think she means that in a positive way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that bad or good?
Well, she says she ranks at 7th, so maybe
Alright.
I thought she mean just like the craziness of all the stuff going on.
Yeah.
Jonathan says, Hard Loving Man comes in 6th. I like the galloping rhythm. Similarly to Flight of the Rat, I feel stronger theme and melody could have been suited here. There is that spaghetti western flavored sort of theme melody, but I don't think it contrasts much. The fake out and the panning guitar noise out have not aged well. This is the final song that works mainly to be as a continued vibe for Deep Purple Mark II. So another vote against the panning thing. You love it. Roback, Headland, not so much.
Eh.
To hell with those guys. But anyway, before we move on, we'll thank our next level of patrons, our core level patrons, before we get into the final 3 here. Just flying along with this one. At the $8.99 What's Going On Here tier, Richard Fusey. At the $6.99 new nice price tier, we have Spike the Rock Cat and Sugar Tea. At the episode $6.66 tier, we have Steve Coldwell. Arthur Smith.
Getting support from the patron Arthur Smith.
Anton Glaving.
Pain in the glaving.
And Charles Meadows. At the $6.65 Almost Evil tier, we have Kenny Wymore and Richie Sucksmith. At the $5.99 The Nice Price tier, Robert Smith and Carl Hellberg. At the 60 kroner Scandinavian Nights tier, you have Newt Morton Johansson. I was DJing a little right there.
The hell was that?
That was my DJ work.
My Czechoslovakian is not so good.
And that is, of course. Oh, wait, what was that one supposed to? Oh, yeah, I'm way ahead of myself. At the $5 Moneylender tier, John Convery, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, Jesper Alman, Alexei the Perfect Stranger Slepikov, Kev Roberts, Percival Frequency, Scott Zerns, Cynthia Doobie, Raf Calf.
My Czechoslovakian is not so good.
Coyote Bongwater. John Maselli.
Have you been drinking?
Like a fish.
Sarah Sanders.
No, Kelly Clarkson!
Jelly Bean and Evan Robison. Thank you so much for your generous support of the Deep Purple podcast. All right, so here we are. We're cruising along, and we are in the final 3, folks. So we're going to let you know number 3, and then once we let you know number 2, you're pretty much like, well, we know what the number 1 is. But here we go. Number 3.
Number 3.
Okay, so we got Bloodsucker.
Mhm.
All right, you sounded not impressed with that.
Well, mine was a little bit lower.
You gave it a 5.
Mm-hmm.
I gave it a 1. This is my favorite song on the album.
Wow.
I just love that. No! And I love at the last verse, which we'll get to, but where he's like, it sounds like his voice is like in a or it's like he's falling down the stairs, or he's like he's going through a Leslie or something. Welcome back, Michael Bagford. He was gone from the stream for a little bit. But yeah, there's something about that, like that effect at the end, which sounds like on paper you'd say, no, we can't do that because you're not going to be able to know what he's saying. And it's going to be stupid. It shouldn't work. But to me, I've always thought it was really cool. And this one I always think of in my earliest days of hearing this album. I think of this, listening to this in Paul's bedroom while we were like writing stories or drawing or playing video games or whatever. Like this is just a standout to me, and I've always had a really soft spot for it. But yeah, so for our rankings, we got Michael Bagford giving this one a 7. So Arthur Smith giving it a 7. And those are the only 7s. As far as first place, obviously me, I just said that. Runar Simonson giving it first place, and also Jonathan Henley giving it first place. Yeah, the Scandinavians love themselves some Bloodsucker.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely not a bad song, but I was like this was like in the contention for my bottom 3.
Yeah.
And I mean I definitely felt it was I liked it better than Living Wreck and Into the Fire in terms of listening to it, because I mean it does have that really heavy, raw, aggressive sound of the early 70s that I know that they were trying to go for, but it's very I don't know, I think of all the songs, it's like it's very plotting, but I think in like not a bad way. I mean there's a lot of like air, like room to breathe, like this, like a lot of stops, like a lot of they put a lot of dynamics into it, so that really makes it heavy, and there's a lot of great Gillan screams in it as well, and they do the back and forth, like the dueling solos, which I think is great. But again, like from when you're looking at the bottom 3 and then the middle and then the top 3, that's how I kind of was sectioning them off. This is like, okay, these are like like I said, something's got to be lower, and I would say this is probably the best of my lesser favorites.
Yep. This part's crazy. I just thought it was like one of the heaviest things I'd ever heard. I don't understand how they conceived of that and actually went through with it. It's one of those things, again, you wonder, was it a mistake? Like they accidentally like put an effect send through the wrong thing and said, oh, that's a cool effect on the vocals. We should leave it on one of the verses or something. Or if they went in there intentionally with the idea to do that. But for this one, we have Eddie writing in and saying this song is a weird arrangement that shouldn't work, but it absolutely does. I agree. Blackboard Tights saying kind of what I say. The screaming last verse is the highlight for me. I'd never heard anything like it, both ridiculous and brilliant. I 100% concur. Great song. The solo trade-offs are fantastic from Scott Haskin. I agree. I love that kind of going back to that going back to that like little riff part and then like trading off the solos is really cool. Weston Supermare Pilgrim, another great aggressive rocker, fantastic vocals. Gillan in top form. Too bad it was never on their live set list then. It's kind of weird that they brought it back with Steve Morse and then played it a million times. Graham Bonnet's Disco Pants and Haircut says, how good is this album? I have Bloodsucker at number 5. I love this song. Always liked Bloodsucker, says Ivan Fjellbu, and Bloodsucker spelled the other way from Steve Morse for that matter. But tough competition here places it at 5th favorite song on the album for me. Again, the riff makes this one of my all-time favorites. That's from Karsten Lau. Great groove, and I really like the solos from Richie and John. It's from Kenny Wymore. Mark Roback says, what I don't like about this one is the tempo changes are kind of abrupt, but I love how the guitar and organ tones seem to match each other. From a vocal standpoint, I've forgotten how heavy the vocals are on this album. Much more metal than I recalled.
Yeah.
Pulsating bass pushes the song forward in an almost hypnotic way. That is from Mr. Yang Wei. Let's see here. Richie is quoted as saying to the others, "If it's not dramatic or exciting, it has no place on this album." And this certainly does deliver as a great follow-up to Speed King. That's from Stuart McCord. Runar Simonson says, "This is my number one because I'd only heard Speed King and Child of Time prior to this. When Speed King was over and Bloodsucker came on, my mind exploded. Awesome raw riff, those screams from Gillan and killer organ, great solo." And sorry, I'm reading all of the Gardos because his are so short. He writes about this one, Butters. Zwapper, groovy as hell again. Great dynamics. Gillan's vocals are really unhinged. I love it. Joe Sigler says, no, more like yes, yes, yes. Love the screech here. Not the biggest in your face riffing here. I think the vocals carry this more. Duncan Lee says, side one of In Rock could be just about perfect. This gets no 3 spot. This gets the number 3 spot just because the other two are out and out classics. What else do we got here? Really tight piece, says Sarah. Richie's riffs are on this album are simple yet so addicting. Really some of the most iconic riffs in the band's history. And to think, she was just looking for a Kelly Clarkson song. She's all over this stuff. It's great. It's like she's been,
That's great.
When I started with Deep Purple, I didn't know who Kelly Clarkson was. Probably because she hasn't released any music yet. But
Correct.
Kev Roberts, just coming to terms with what just happened with Speed King, then bam, such a brutal track, and Roger easily excels on this. Possibly my favorite track on the album, but he does give this one a 2 with this ranking. And Jonathan, how do you follow up the Speedy Majesty? Well, a good idea might be one of Purple's best songs ever made. Bloodsucker has less of a hard-rocking excess and comes out snug and tight. I like that. Snug and tight. Sounds like a sweater that you shouldn't have put in the dryer. But without sacrificing any of the 1970 Deep Purple's nastiness. In fact, it might be even more nasty than Speed King. Oh, my goodness. Sacrilege. But I love it. He also gave this song a number 1. So, wow. All right. So the next track up is going to give away what the final track is. And here we go. Our number 2 song.
Number 2.
The album opener, Speed King. And we're going with the UK version, of course. There's no foreplay in the American version. It just gets right into it.
Yeah.
All right. So, Speed King, that gives away what if you're following at home, you might have already figured out what the number 1 song is. And it's probably not super surprising. But this is Speed King coming in at number 2. Looking at the rankings here, you ranked this number 2. I ranked this number 3. For number 1, David Haddam gave it a number 1. Blackmore Tights gave it a number 1. Weston Supermare Pilgrim, Adrian Hernandez, Arthur Smith. I feel like I'm just reading the patrons list. Yang Wei gave this a 1. Anton Glaving gave it number 1. Duncan Leese gave it a number 1. And Lord Longford gave it a number 1. 2 people ranked this as number 7, their least favorite track on the album. And that is Hank the Tank and Scott Haskin.
All right. So you just gave me a roadmap of people that I have to send bomb threats to.
Bomb threats.
How could you?
How dare you? I'm going to send a bomb threat. Can you bomb threat like an individual residence? I guess you can, but it
Yeah,
seems
why
like
not?
it's not as disruptive. Usually they do it to like organizations, but they shouldn't do it at all. Michael Bagford is asking us if anyone's gotten into this podcast because of the Ethel Merman Disco album podcast episode from Mark and Pete 70s podcasts.
A very niche group of people, I'm sure.
Yes, that would be great. Okay, so Speed King with the full foreplay intro from the British version. On this one, Speed King, hell of a way to start an album. Noise, says Michael Badford. Don't call him Bradford. Noise, spelled like that too. Explosive album opener. Good golly, this would definitely wake you up from a nap, says Blackmore Tights. Saul Evans says, can only be the UK version with the power and chaos. Scott Haskins saying, just a little overplay for me. Something had to be last. Ovis Nakvi says, punk. He's calling this full-on punk. Graham Bonnet's Disco Pants and Haircut says, Speed King at number 4. What am I doing? I know it's hard sometimes, right?
Yeah, well, not with this.
Adrian Hernandez saying the intro with Richie shredding shows he was way ahead of his time. Agreed. Arthur Smith, my favorite, as it's the first song from this band and it comes blasting out at you. I can't imagine what must have been like in 1970 to hear this for the first time in context of everything else that was out there at the time. Just brilliant. Norman Weichelbaum saying, I always liked the pre-version Kneel and Pray a bit more, but anyway, this song is a killer. What else we got? The start of the classic Deep Purple sound, still a crowd favorite, says Kenny Wymore. Mark Roback says, play Speed King!
Of course he did.
Yeah, we'll have to do that one. He's requesting Speed King during Speed King. This guy cannot be satisfied. It's unbelievable. Play more Speed King. What else we got? Best opener to an album, says Raf Calf. I am glad I have the European version, complete with organ intro. Best song on this album. Actually, one of my least favorite with the band. Always prefer the live version. Stockholm 1070 is not bad. I think he meant 1970. I don't think William the Conqueror was in the band at any point. That was from Hank the Tank. Just messing with you, Hank. Simple typo. Robert Smith, imagine listening to this upon release compared with Mark 1. Yes, and that's something we've talked about a million times. Like, your mind just, not only is it a lineup change, you're getting different people in the band. Like, how does your mind grasp? I guess if you're thinking of the ending of April, it does kind of keep that same intensity, but the stuff they were doing on those previous albums was just so different.
Yeah.
The little sneaky second or extra chorus at the end here. Zwapper says, crappy lyrics, cool chorus riff, dynamic solo battles between John and Richie. Roger really shines. And that bass tone, oh.
Yeah, Roger's early bass tone was amazing.
Glaving giving this a top 5 Purple song and ranking this at number 1. Joe Sigler saying Deep Purple has made a few statement songs over their entire career, and this is definitely one of them. Starts off as a complete change to the last album. I agree 100%. The Gardeau writes in, and he says, kind of mirroring what Mark said, he's saying, Speed King! So it's getting a lot of love from the 70s Weekly podcast. Whenever I listen to this, I imagine what it must have been like to hear it in June 1970 when you first listened to the album, says Lord Longford. A lot of people are saying that because it's true. The passion and excitement is audible, says Sarah. One of my favorite instrumental interludes between John and Richie. Overall, everyone firing on all cylinders. Yeah, and I agree that little kind of like does that what would be typical in Mark II, which is to have a solo section that kind of completely changes, goes down tempo, kind of gets a little calmer, and just all of a sudden becomes this little Baroque number, and then goes back into this killer song.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the most distinct things about it. I mean, this being like when I heard this one, I heard on the Deepest Purple, which I believe had some of the UK intro. It didn't have Richie's solo at the beginning. It just started with the keyboard and
Oh
then
yeah.
went into the song. And then subsequent versions of the song, it just started right
Yeah.
off like at the beginning. And then it wasn't until they re-released it again where I heard, oh, there's even more before the keyboard part. So I heard it all out of order. But
Yeah.
each time discovering a new part, I was just like, all right, this is getting even better.
I think my reaction when I heard, because it was years later when I heard the UK version, I was like, wait, I was like, is this the wrong song? Did they like I was like, oh shoot, did they put the wrong CD in this case or what?
Yeah.
What is it? And then you realize that there was that whole part that was cut out. But I mean, there is something to be said. I agree. I really do like the intro to this. But there is something to be said of you just put that thing in and it's like, bomb, bomb. It just hits you right away. And that's how I
Yeah.
grew up hearing the song. And it was just kind of like, holy crap, these guys didn't come to mess around.
Yeah, I mean, it was really tough to pick the top two, especially for all the things about this song. I mean, yeah, you were just talking about how it's we went from Mark One to Mark Two, and I mean, immediately you have Gillan coming in and kind of having the Little Richard influence
Yep.
that he brought to the kind of the energy and the vibe of the song. And just his vocals are insane, especially like after that breakdown part, which is also insane because you have this high energy kind of almost like a tribute to their influences. And then it brings it down to kind of this jazzy type of section between the guitar and the keyboard, which was always one of my favorite Blackmore Lord interludes. And then it ramps back up with some of the craziest Gillan screams I've ever heard. I mean, even to this day, it makes me go like, "Whew,"
Yeah.
I had to like listen to it again the other day. And while he's screaming, he goes up so high, and
Yeah.
in the background, you hear the band sounding like they're ready to just like a freight train ready to just go off the cliff, and
Yep.
then they pull the song back together, and it's just one of those things like, how the hell did they do that? And all the time you have this creakety dated old production which just makes it sound so heavy and wild, and it's just like there's nothing to hate about this song. I
Yep.
mean, I take away all of the, like, we're just rating it on the album now, so I'm not thinking of any live versions or anything that's taken away from it over the years, or I never get tired of it.
Yep.
There's a reason people scream for it.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh,
Bang,
is that my
bang! That's the
cue?
reason that people say this.
I
That's
love
why
it.
people want to hear it so bad.
Exactly. And finally, Jonathan Hedlund writes, this intro is totally obnoxious and sounds like a wreck of distortion. How to not love that?
Yeah.
And he writes a lot more too, but this is really gnarly with a forward-facing groove. The heavy soft jam to the 3-minute mark. And he says, the fact that I rank Speed King 5th out of 7 is telling the massive rocking quality this album offers. All right, folks. Well, if you're paying attention at home, and you very well might have been able to guess this before you even listened to the episode, but here is our conclusion.
Number 1.
Of course, it is Child in Time. I mean, hard to argue with Child in Time or Speed King being number 1. I mean, there's no argument for me there.
Yeah.
You ranked Child in Time number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I ranked it number 2. So not too this doesn't
Not too far off.
This does get 2 people ranking it 7th, which is surprising.
Yikes.
One of them is the Gardot.
Oh,
The other one is Swapper, the Electric Alchemist. So we'll get to we'll have to read their. Well, we'll probably have time to read everybody's because it's Child in Time. But
yeah, exactly.
we will definitely read theirs to just kind of see what they're thinking is it the something had to be last, or is it actually something like an active dislike?
Mhm.
And then for number 1s, we have obviously you, Michael Badford, Eddie Lyon, Saul Evans, Graham Bonnet's Disco Pants and head cuts, Norman Weichelbaum, Ivan Fjellbu, Kenny Wymore, Mark Roback, Stuart McCord, Joe Sigler, Will Porter, Anders Engstrom, all ranked at number 1. It's got a few 2s. It has no 6s, but a couple of 5s. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of felt like a Tool in a way, ranking it for like number 1, because I'm like, it's just so obvious. Like this
Yeah,
and
but hey.
Speed King, but I mean, you can't argue with that. So
No,
I
of
was
course not.
really going back and forth with it. And first thing I thought to myself was, how interesting was it that the two of my favorite ones were kind of direct inspirations from other songs, because obviously this one is famous for its similarity to Bombay Calling,
Yep.
right? Which everybody
Similarity is being generous.
which everybody knows.
But it is funny because that song is very like upbeat. It's like doo doo doo, bip-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo. Like it's
Right,
you know,
right.
it's the same notes, but they the way that they do it is so much different. So
But yeah, exactly. So I mean, but I think the thing that really propelled this to number 1 for me is that they took that influence in a different direction, and they put in heavier dynamics, the long solo sections. It's like this is where they kind of like took the progginess from their well, they're still in their early days, but I guess from the Mark 1 days, and they kind of turned it on its head into something different, like the best
from the early
version.
days a year and a half ago.
Or from their first version, where they were just kind of these like long proggy, kind of like not relatable type of versions of songs, and then this one was just this super emotional, like you could just really get into it, and before you know it, it's over and you're like, oh, this is like this 10-minute long song or whatever. And then never mind what they did with it live, but I mean, you just have all the dynamics in this song. And I mean, I had to pick Gillan, this because of Gillan's vocals. I mean, between this and Speed King, it's just like minute for minute, like his vocals have to be more impressive on this, because how he didn't, all the years he sang this, how he can still sing. And I mean, not obviously as high as he used to, but how he can still sing and sound like himself at all after belting this out for however many years alone is unbelievable. I mean, never mind that he was screaming 10 times like this on Born Again, like 13 years later, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, just everything on this song is just so progressive, well put together, emotional, just the best of Deep Purple right here.
Yep. Yeah, it's really interesting because, like you said, thinking about Mark 1, like they hadn't quite, even with like something like April, which I consider to be, an early masterpiece by them. They while it had all these great parts, they just couldn't quite tie them in together in a way that they were seamless. It was still a little clunky the way it went from section to section. Part of that was probably production, part of that was probably arrangement and all that. But here on In Rock, you see probably their first complete masterpiece, which is Child in Time.
Yes.
It's not as complex as April with the different parts, but it's stitched together in a way where this seems like one coherent song rather than things that are just kind of glued together and stuck together. Like I love all those individual parts of April, and it's their longest song, even longer than this. But when it comes to like just something more cohesive, I gotta go with Child in Time. Yes, so let's take a look at what everybody said about Child in Time. Michael Bagford saying, I know this might be cliche, but I put this one at number 1 for some, but damn it, it's a classic. There's nothing to say about this song that hasn't been said before, says Eddie Lyon. It's absolute perfection from melody to lyrics, vocals, solo. Blackmore Tights has lost some of its initial shine, but it's just a masterpiece. Saul Evans, there are no words, best Deep Purple track. And I think that's a very fair. I mean, anything's fair if it's your favorite track, but this is a classic for a reason. I wouldn't be surprised to hear it's anyone's favorite. Scott Haskin, every time I listen to this, I ask myself why I don't listen more, because it is a great song. Weston Supermare Pilgrim. Child in Time headed the Dutch top 100 of all time for 20-something years before it was replaced by Bohemian Rhapsody. A masterpiece, no doubt, even though my favorite version of the song is the one made in Japan. Astonishing how good they perform such a complex song on stage. Elvis Nakvi says, people went to prison for playing it. I don't know what that means. I'm gonna have to ask him. Arthur Smith, bona fide classic Deep Purple song. Should have been, might well be my favorite. Down a couple of notches only because I seem to have to prepare myself mentally to listen to it. Maybe at this stage, a little overexposed. I can totally get the overexposure part, but it's definitely one of those ones where, especially if I see a video of them playing it live, if I see this start, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch this whole video.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. What would put me off of listening to this song anytime is like, I don't think I have time.
Yeah, I gotta go to work tomorrow. I can't stay up that late.
Yeah.
Norman Weichelbaum says, the song that made DP really huge with a stolen riff, but who cares?
Yeah.
And it's funny because we talked about it ages ago, but you know, it's a beautiful day. Return the favor by basically stealing why
Smoke on the Water.
No.
Um,
all I can think of is Hard Road. So Wring That Neck.
Oh yeah.
So they stole Ring That Neck and kind of released it as their own. They did kind of like a jazzier version of it, which is pretty cool. And that was cool that they kind of had a good understanding between the bands. Like they could have both sued each other, but they're like, it's fine. Ivan Fjellbu says, this song is a division of its own, masterful, ethereal, beautiful, sorrowful, meaningful. Agreed. Karsten Lau, hard to put this as number 2, but... ... Kenny Wymore, Gillan's signature song, Nuff Said. Mark Roback, this one shoots right to the top. Love the vocals, the genteel intro, then the build with the whole band blending with Richie's guitar. Maybe the first track in DP's discography where Richie's mastery really shines. My only downside to the song is I always felt at the ending to be disjointed. I also love the production mix on this. Would have liked an outro with a smooth transition and could do more without the vocal moaning, which we're about to hear.
Yeah.
They talk a lot about that on their show, like the songs from the 70s that have like the kind of like moaning or orgasmic sounds in them and just how weird it is. It's because there's a lot of them. I don't know if this would fall in that category. Yeah, actually this would be this would be an alarming love-making noise. No! Ah!
Well, I mean, I think that this...
Is he okay in there?
I think that this goes along perfectly with everything else on the rest of the album. How I said that everything sounds like it's ready to collapse at any second.
Yep.
That's what this song does at the end.
And I like that part of the end sounds like it was, you know, they dubbed that final hit after. You can hear a little bit of like a distance in that recording, but it's cool.
what Bagford said.
I can't see my chat right now. What do you say?
Oh,
I guess
yeah. Go ahead.
I guess it wouldn't be out of place in the 70s to hear a K-Tel moaning song compilation album while having a cheese fondue party.
Two very specific 70s things.
In one of those
right
little
there.
conversation pits.
Yeah.
I always wanted one of the when I was a kid and I saw the Beatles Help movie and they go in that they go to those like it looks like it's 4 buildings side by side and they all open their doors, but it's the same one giant building and they have like a little conversation pit. I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. To just go down there. I think John Lennon jumps in there and starts reading a book, and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had that in my house.
Yeah.
No, it's that. Well, we're doing a remodel now. Maybe I'll just spring that on them. Hey guys, I'm thinking of course, the ceiling in here would be visible in my shot right now because they have to cut the floor open.
Yeah. So we'd see you every week like this. Welcome to the deep part. Like you've been leaning over.
Oh, my neck.
Wring that neck. Oh.
What else we got here? Raf Calf says, an epic song, brilliant in every way from every member of the band. Terrific solo atmosphere of the song is unequaled. Best song on the album. Rich says, what can you say that it cannot be said? That has not been said, of course. The screams in the song converted me to the religion of Gillan. Unlike many other metal singers, there is still a masculinity in his voice, just a raw energy, juxtaposed with the tenderness of the verse is spine-tingling. They are the masters of dynamics, 100%. Yeah, and I would say, I was converted, but by this, and of course, Gethsemane are probably two of the songs where you're just like, this guy is
yes,
more than just a singer. As in Speed King, I prefer this live, says Hank the Tank. Same thing with me. I mean, I love the album version, but there's something about them doing it live. There's something about the energy of that's just next level.
Yeah.
Definition of epic track, writes Stuart McCord. The Gardeau says mid. Mid. Okay.
Gardeau.
What can you say, really? Next to Smoke on the Water defines the Mark II era, says Zawapper. What else we got? Number one song on the album for me, says Joe Sigler, and by a lot too. I have to imagine if this doesn't end up number one on the overall rankings, there will be riots in the streets. Well, thankfully, we are spared from that, as it came in number one. My all-time favorite song, okay, it might have the power of some of the live versions, says Will Porter out there. And this sounds a little bit dated at times, but I still absolutely adore this.
I think that's the charm of the whole album.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it's funny because this and Fireball sound dated, but when you get to, by the time you get to Machine Head, it's like, I don't want to say it sounds modern, but it's much less so. The production just becomes much, much cleaner and clearer. And what else we got here? Lord Longford, on 99.999% of albums, this would be the number one track, but on this album, it ends up in the middle. This is all about Gillan's vocals. Apart from maybe Jesus Christ Superstar, I don't think he's screamed better. Probably the most iconic song out of Deep Purple's catalog, says Sarah. There's nothing that's there really is nothing that sounds or ever sounded like this afterwards.
What was that?
Yeah. Too much reading aloud. And then Jonathan Headland saying, without a doubt, a classic and inspiration for the countless hard rock and heavy metal and bell-bottom rockers to follow. We did kind of, what the heck happened here? Okay. That's strange. Okay. There's like a slot for strange kind of woman. And I'm like, why is that here? I must have missed something up.
Whoops.
But yeah, I've got a ton of recaps from everybody about how they feel the album as a whole. Again, I'll probably, in the interest of time, just kind of put that in the show notes, but rather than reading 36 comments on the album as a whole. But John, album as a whole, where are you thinking with this one? What do you want to do to close it out?
I mean, this is it's an interesting album when you think about it, because it's so different from what they were a year before.
Mm-hmm.
Even with two new members, it's just astonishing, because you hear, I mean, like Lord actually is Lord and Pace sound the same. It's like Richie just something clicked. I keep saying that something clicked from Mark 1 to Mark 2
too.
Yeah, exactly. And he just like took off. And I mean, I think that the influences that Gillan and Glover brought in, coupled with that, I mean, I think that maybe they helped bring Richie to the next level with this playing. And I think that the band, this is where they found each other and they found that magic. And they just created this heavy music that just clicked like it didn't before. And even though it has that what we said was a dated production, it's not a bad thing.
Mhm.
I mean, it makes it sound so heavy, and it even brings to my attention sometimes like I can't believe that they were playing this kind of stuff. Like nobody was playing this back in like 1970. Like these guys had to have invented this, or nobody was doing this. It just, it's kind of like when you listen to stuff that Hendrix was doing or other stuff, and it just blows your mind because now everybody's
Yeah.
done this, and you're just like, but when you hear it back then, you're just like, holy shit. So, I mean, everything from like the arrangements to, um, we were just talking about Child in Time, how the kind of progressive arrangement was beyond anything they'd done before. And even sometimes you think about John Lord, like this guy could write concertos, and instead he's over here making his keyboard sound like a wailing cat and an ambulance going off a cliff and everything else, like just making some of the heaviest metal Hammond solos you've ever heard in your life. And you're just like, and then he's also like, oh yeah, let me score some stuff with violins and everything. And you're like, where did these guys even come from? It's just amazing. That's why I think that this album just um, resonates with everybody and everybody loves it so much, is because it's like the beginning of something, and there's just so much amazing groundbreaking stuff on it, that they didn't even back then they probably didn't even know they were doing it. They're just like, yeah, we're just making some heavy music, and it's like, but yeah, it's definitely like an important album. It's great. It's one of my favorites. I mean, they could keep releasing albums and they're doing great stuff, but it's like you can't recapture what this is.
100%. All right. Well, let's go on to our next level, our foundation level patrons. Coming in at the £3.50 Deep Purple New York tier, and he was ranking the album. We've got Lord Longford. At the £3 Aromatic Feed tier, Simon Ford and Richard Brees. At the $3.33 Halfway to Evil tier, Stephen Sharp. And staying up late to be on the live stream, Duncan Leask.
Smoke on the water while you're in the sky.
I hope she's in bed by now, though. It's got to be late for her. Middle of the night. At the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, Peter Gordeau. Ian DeRosier. Mark Roback. Stuart McCord. Ivan Fjellbu. Runar Simonson. Where am I? Ruinous Inadequacies. Corey Morissette. Ashley. Rose. Weston Supermare Pilgrim. Joe Dopefish Sigler. And at the $1.71 I Want My Own tier, we have
Rich Youngwe Shaylor.
I know who Rich is. Rich is my favorite.
Who the hell is that?
And at the 10 kroner tier, Karsten Lau.
Cold, hard Danish kroner.
At the $1 made-up name tier, we have the, what? Okay, we have the Tomb Sucker, Leaky Mausoleum, Stephen Somerville, the Concerto 1999 Fanatic, Hank the Tank, Private Eyes, Ashen Lionel,
Blackmore Tights,
Steve Down to Earth Kohler, Zwapper the Electric Alchemist, Andres Engstrom, ICDC, Durple Purple, Purple Swede,
Swede?
David Adam, Graham Bonnets, Disco Pants and Haircuts.
I said, Graham, our audience expects you to be a bit more dirty.
Disco pants and haircuts, yeah.
I'm just going to put my guitar across his head.
And Eddie Lyon.
Homosexual.
Thank you so much to all of you for your generous support of the Deep Purple podcast. Oh, we did it, John, and patrons.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we did.
For everyone who participated. We had tons of great participation. I'll have to put all of those. I'll try to figure out a way that I can easily take the spreadsheet that was generated and put it into the show notes. So if it's not there when you see this, as Joe pointed out this morning, I was I messed up this show notes this morning. So I will try to get it out there if I can find a way to easily convert that. But yeah, man, unbelievable. To think
I never thought we'd
ranking all the albums.
Yeah, I never thought we'd come back to this. So I was very happy we did, because when we first ranked it, we're like, well, I guess that's it.
I guess that's it. Little did we know, 5.5 years later, we would be able to talk about it again.
Exactly. Well, I talked about it in between then, but I mean, mostly not on the show.
Yeah. And, hey, if anyone's got any ideas of different ways we could revisit the classic albums too, hey, just let us know. Because, there's lots of people maybe that started listening that haven't listened to our original In Rock. I don't even know what the hell we said. It's probably it's like our 8th episode or something, or 10th episode. So it's, who knows, probably dubious quality all around, but yeah, it'll be nice to revisit some of these albums in a different format. But yeah,
yes,
that's it, folks. Again, big thank you to everybody who joined us in the chat. Extra special thanks to Duncan Leese, because he's the only one that's not near our time zone that tuned in. So really appreciate it. And yeah, anything else before we any requests or anything else we should do before we leave?
Any requests? Play Speed King. We all thought the same thing. We all thought the same thing. Play it again.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us and tuning in. And we'll be back at you next week with another exciting episode.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also leave us a review in Apple Podcasts to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.